I never thought my own brother could betray me like this. I trusted him with my mother's legacy, with the memories of our family, and with the small inheritance she saved over her entire life. But he hid thousands of dollars, lied to me for months, and even tried to steal back what was rightfully mine after the court ordered him to return it. I felt anger, heartbreak, and a sense of helplessness that I cannot describe. Every step I took to protect myself and my mother's memory was met with his lies, his threats, and his obsession. Yet, in the end, justice prevailed, karma found him, and I finally reclaimed what was mine. This is a story about betrayal, greed, and the power of truth, and how family can hurt you in ways you never imagined. But fairness and courage will always win in the end. I still can't believe this happened. My own brother, my blood, hid thousands of dollars that belonged to our mom. And when the truth finally came out, the court made him give me half. Half! I have to tell you everything from the beginning because this story, it's unreal. Our mom passed away last year. She wasn't rich, but she had saved a little over her lifetime. A small inheritance, enough to help her kids and pay off some bills. I trusted my brother. We were always close, or at least I thought we were. I never imagined he could do something like this. When she passed, I went to the house to help clean and sort through her things. That's when I noticed something strange. Some envelopes tucked away in the back of her closet. Cash. Lots of cash. And some bank statements showing a sum that didn't match what my brother told me. I asked him about it. "Those are just Mom's old savings," he said. "Nothing to worry about." But something about his tone, it made me uneasy. I started looking closer, quietly, while he thought I was asleep or out of the room. That's when I discovered it. He had transferred thousands of dollars into an account in his name, without telling anyone, not even me. I confronted him. "Why didn't you tell me? This was Mom's money," I shouted. He looked at me like I was crazy. "It's mine now. I took care of her during her last months," he said. I froze. That was it. No apology, no shame. Just cold logic. I didn't know what to do. I felt betrayed, heartbroken, and angry all at once. I couldn't believe my own brother could be so selfish. I tried talking to him again. "Mom wouldn't have wanted you to keep it all," I said, my voice shaking. He laughed. "She's gone. It's mine." I knew I had to take action. I hired a lawyer. The case went to court. Days turned into weeks. Every time I got a call about the court date, my stomach sank. But I kept reminding myself, I wasn't just fighting for the money. I was fighting for Mom's memory, for fairness, and for the truth. There were moments when I almost gave up. My brother tried to gaslight me. "You'll never prove anything," he sneered. But I had the statements, the witness accounts, and my lawyer. Slowly, piece by piece, the truth came out. The courtroom was tense. My brother sat there, looking smug, like he had already won. But as the judge read through the evidence, his confidence started to crack. The room fell silent when the lawyer showed the transfers and pointed out how he deliberately hid Mom's money from me. I could see it on his face, shock, fear, guilt. And then the verdict. "Half of the inheritance shall be returned to the plaintiff," the judge declared. My brother's face went pale. I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and satisfaction. Finally, justice had been served. I received the money and immediately felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Not because I wanted more cash, but because the truth had come out. My brother avoided prison, but the shame and guilt would stay with him forever. Sometimes, karma doesn't need to be cruel. It just waits for the right moment. Family can betray you in ways you never imagined. But fairness, honesty, and courage always win in the end. Protect your family's legacy, and never let greed go unchecked. After the court ruling, I thought the worst was behind me. I thought maybe now I could finally breathe and start healing from the betrayal. But life had other plans. My brother, of course, didn't accept the verdict quietly. He sulked around the house, barely talking, giving me cold stares that made my skin crawl. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed one evening while I was trying to unpack some things from Mom's closet. I ignored him, but the tension was thick, like a storm cloud ready to burst. I had no idea he was plotting, and honestly, I didn't want to think he could be capable of more manipulation. Yet, deep down, I knew him too well. A few weeks after the court decision, I got a call from my cousin Emma. She sounded nervous, almost panicked. Have you checked the old storage unit Mom rented? You might want to look soon. I frowned. Mom had always kept her extra stuff there, little treasures, letters, and some old family documents. I hadn't thought much about it, trusting my brother to not touch anything. But now, Emma's words made my stomach twist. Something was wrong. I drove to the storage unit that evening, heart hammering. The lock was new. My brother had changed it. I felt a rush of anger so strong I could barely catch my breath. He can't get away with this, I whispered to myself. I decided not to confront him immediately. I needed proof. I hired a private investigator to check the storage and find out if he had moved anything valuable. Days felt like weeks. Every notification from the investigator made me anxious. And then it came, photos of him at the unit, moving boxes late at night. Some boxes were labeled with my name. I felt my hands shake as I looked at the images. I can't believe this, I muttered. My brother was trying to erase what was rightfully mine, and now he was getting desperate. I confronted him that night. I know about the storage unit, the boxes. You can't just take what's mine, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He leaned back on the couch, arms crossed, smirking. It's not yours until it's in your hands, he said casually, as if he were talking about a sandwich, not thousands of dollars in family memories. My anger boiled. Mom trusted both of us. How could you betray her memory like this? I shouted. He didn't answer. He just shrugged and went to his room, slamming the door behind him. Over the next few days, the tension in the house became unbearable. I couldn't eat, sleep, or focus on work. Every time I saw him, my stomach twisted. I knew I had to act, but I also knew patience was key. I filed a motion with the court to include the storage unit in the original case. The legal system moved slowly, but I couldn't just sit and watch him continue stealing and hiding. I wanted justice, and I wasn't going to let him win again. When the court date finally arrived, the atmosphere was electric. My brother walked in with his usual smug expression, like nothing could touch him. The judge, however, looked serious. We presented the evidence, the photos, the statements from the private investigator, and even testimonies from Emma and other family members. The tension in the room was suffocating. My brother tried to protest, claiming the items were gifts or Mom's things she wouldn't have wanted me to see. The judge raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. I watched my brother's face pale, realizing his web of lies was unraveling. The judge paused, flipping through the documents, and then spoke slowly. It appears there has been a deliberate attempt to withhold and misappropriate property belonging to the estate. This court cannot ignore these actions. My brother looked around nervously, suddenly aware that this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, trust, and family honor. I felt a mix of relief and nervous anticipation. The courtroom was silent as the judge continued. The defendant will return all items in the storage unit to the plaintiff immediately, and any attempts to sell or hide property will be considered contempt of court. My heart raced. I could finally feel justice coming through, piece by piece. After the hearing, my brother avoided me completely. I heard from neighbors that he spent the evening walking around the neighborhood, looking lost and muttering to himself. I didn't gloat, though I admit I felt a quiet satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. The truth that even family members could be held accountable when greed overcame respect and love. I went to the storage unit the next day with a court-appointed representative. Boxes that had been hidden were opened, and inside, I found items I didn't even remember existed. Old letters, jewelry, and some cash Mom had tucked away. Tears filled my eyes. It wasn't about the money. It was about reclaiming what belonged to our family, our memories, and my own peace of mind. I sent my brother a message. It's over. The court decided. You can't erase the past, and you can't steal the truth. He didn't respond. I didn't expect him to. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. I felt a strange sense of calm, knowing the battle was won. But I also realized that our relationship would never be the same. He had chosen greed over family, and the consequences were inevitable. Mom's legacy was safe now, and I could finally honor her memory without fear of deceit. I learned something crucial through all of this. Family can betray you in ways you never imagined, but courage, persistence, and truth are more powerful than any deception. Even now, when I walk through the house, I see reminders of the struggle, the betrayal, and the small victories. I understand my brother better now, not as someone to forgive, but as someone whose choices define him. And as for me, I've learned that standing up for what's right isn't easy, but it's worth it. Justice doesn't always come instantly, but it arrives when you refuse to give up. And sometimes, karma doesn't need to be cruel. It just waits for the right moment, and it's terrifyingly precise. I thought the court ruling and the storage unit drama were the worst of it, but life had more surprises in store. Just when I felt I could finally relax, something happened that shook me to my core. It started with a letter, plain and unassuming, slipped under my door. There was no return address, only my name written in careful handwriting. I hesitated before opening it, a pit of dread forming in my stomach. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a note. "You think you've won? This isn't over. Your brother." My hands trembled. I had hoped this chapter was closed, but clearly he wasn't done. The next day, strange things started happening around the house. I found small items moved from their usual places, documents I had carefully stored gone missing, and worst of all, my personal journal, where I wrote about everything, including the court battles and my emotions, was gone. My heart sank. Could he really be so obsessive, so vindictive, that he would invade my private life just to hurt me? I felt trapped in a nightmare. Every time I saw him, his eyes darted toward me with a mix of fear and defiance, like a cornered animal. I knew he was capable of anything. I decided I couldn't handle this alone. I called Emma again, my cousin who had helped me before, and asked her to come stay for a while. She agreed immediately. "You can't let him get inside your head. You need someone with you, someone he can't manipulate," she said. Having her around gave me a small measure of comfort, but the tension in the house was unbearable. Every creak, every shadow felt like a threat. I started locking doors, changing codes, and even installing cameras, measures I never imagined I'd need to take against my own brother. One night, I was reviewing the footage when I saw it. My brother sneaking into my room, moving things around, muttering to himself. "You'll regret this. I'll get it all back," he whispered. I felt my blood run cold. This wasn't just greed anymore. This was obsession, a dangerous kind that could ruin everything. I knew I had to escalate. I couldn't just protect the money and items. I had to protect myself. The next morning, I called my lawyer and explained the situation. We filed for a restraining order and updated the court about his harassment. I felt a mix of relief and guilt. Was I overreacting? Maybe, but I couldn't ignore the warning signs. Then came the most shocking moment. I received a phone call from a man claiming to be a representative of a private auction house. He told me someone had tried to sell my mom's jewelry, items that I had personally cataloged and placed in the storage unit. My stomach dropped. I immediately suspected my brother. Could he have stolen the items, despite the court ruling, to sell them secretly? I rushed to the auction house, accompanied by Emma and the police, and arrived just in time to stop the sale. The items were recovered, and my brother's handwriting on some receipts confirmed it was him. I couldn't believe the lengths he would go to. I felt a mixture of rage, sorrow, and vindication. The court acted quickly after this new evidence. Another hearing was scheduled, this time with more serious consequences. My brother tried to act innocent, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that someone else had taken the items. But the evidence was clear, and this time, the judge wasn't lenient. "Your deliberate actions show a pattern of theft and harassment against the plaintiff. You will face additional penalties and are ordered to return all property immediately," the judge declared. My brother's face went pale. I watched him crumble in real time, realizing that his greed and obsession had led him down a path he couldn't escape. After the hearing, I went home and sat quietly in Mom's old chair, feeling the weight of everything. The house was still tense, the air thick with unspoken words, but at least the immediate threat was neutralized. I started sorting through the recovered items, carefully placing each piece of jewelry, letter, and document back where it belonged. Tears ran down my face as I handled some of Mom's old letters, reading her words, her advice, and her hopes for her children. I realized that the real victory wasn't the money or even the court rulings. It was preserving her memory, her trust, and the values she had tried to instill in us. But the story wasn't over. Even after the court and the storage unit drama, my brother continued to hover around, silent, brooding, waiting for an opportunity. I began noticing small signs, glances from neighbors, subtle comments, and even a few anonymous notes left around the neighborhood. It was a reminder that some wounds don't heal overnight, and some people don't change easily. I decided to focus on myself, my healing, and the people who truly mattered. I refused to give him the power to dictate my life or poison my happiness. I realized that in family drama, sometimes winning the court case is only half the battle. The other half is reclaiming your peace, your dignity, and your sense of self. In the end, I found solace in small victories, spending time with Emma, reconnecting with other family members, and honoring Mom in meaningful ways. I also set strict boundaries with my brother, boundaries he could not cross. Every time I saw him, I felt a sense of quiet strength. I had faced betrayal, deceit, and obsession, and I had survived. And through it all, I learned a vital lesson. Some people will test your limits, betray your trust, and push you to the edge, but courage, persistence, and belief in what is right will always triumph. Justice isn't always immediate, but it comes, often in ways we least expect, and it is sweeter when paired with integrity and resilience. Just when I thought things were finally settling, the situation took a turn I never could have anticipated. It started with a phone call late at night. My brother's voice was low and calm, almost chilling in its control. "You think you've won, but you haven't seen the last of me," he said. I felt my heart stop. He wasn't just angry. He was plotting, and I realized then that the court rulings and the storage unit recoveries were only temporary victories. He wanted revenge, and I had no idea what form it would take. The next day, I found a letter slipped under my door, written in a handwriting so familiar it made my stomach turn. Inside were threats and veiled warnings. Your so-called justice won't last. One day, you'll wish you hadn't crossed me. I felt a wave of panic and fury. I called Emma immediately. "He's escalating. I don't know how far he'll go," I said. Emma looked concerned. "You have to stay calm, but you need a plan. He's dangerous, not just vindictive." We spent hours going over every possible scenario, trying to anticipate his next move. That evening, I returned home from work and noticed the front door slightly ajar. My blood ran cold. I knew he was inside. I called the police and waited, heart hammering, as they arrived. When they entered, my brother was sitting in the living room, calm, almost smug, surrounded by some of the items he had tried to steal from the storage unit again. "You really think the law can protect you from me?" he said, smirking at the officers. I couldn't believe the audacity. I wanted to scream, to grab him, but I knew the moment had to be handled carefully. The police arrested him on the spot for trespassing and attempted theft, and I felt a mixture of fear, relief, and grim satisfaction. The court proceedings that followed were intense. My brother tried to argue that his actions were justified, claiming he had emotional rights to the items because he had been close to Mom in her final days. I sat in the courtroom, listening in disbelief as he twisted the truth. The judge, however, was firm. The defendant's repeated attempts to manipulate, threaten, and steal from the plaintiff demonstrate a pattern of behavior that cannot be ignored. This court will take all necessary measures to protect the plaintiff and ensure justice is served. I felt my heart lift slightly. Finally, someone recognized the seriousness of his actions. Over the next few weeks, he was ordered to return every single item, and any further attempts to interfere with my life would result in harsher penalties. He began to crumble under the pressure. Neighbors reported him ranting, pacing, and leaving anonymous threats in mailboxes. It was a frightening transformation, from the smug, confident brother I had known to a desperate man unraveling before everyone's eyes. I didn't gloat, though. I felt a quiet sense of justice, knowing he was facing the consequences of his own choices. But the tension didn't end there. My brother's obsession with revenge manifested in more subtle ways. I began noticing strange cars parked near my house, odd phone calls with no one on the line, and even a break-in attempt at night that thankfully failed thanks to our security system. Each incident reminded me that greed and obsession can make people dangerous. I realized that this was no longer just about money or inheritance. It was about control, about power, about proving dominance in a family torn apart by betrayal. I took every precaution I could think of. I changed locks, installed cameras, and made sure Emma and I had an emergency plan in place. I also sought advice from a therapist, someone who could help me navigate the anxiety, fear, and trauma of having a family member turn against me so completely. Talking about it helped me realize that his actions were not a reflection of my failures, but of his inability to respect boundaries, love, and family. I needed to protect myself, and I needed to remain calm, rational, and strategic. The courtroom drama resumed with new evidence. This time, it wasn't just about stolen items. It was about harassment, threats, and emotional abuse. Witnesses testified about his obsessive behavior, and a private investigator presented detailed logs of his attempts to intimidate me. I watched my brother in court, his face pale, hands shaking, a man unmasked by his own greed and obsession. He tried to argue, he tried to charm, but it was too late. The judge's patience had worn thin. The court has thoroughly reviewed all evidence. The defendant's actions demonstrate a calculated and repeated attempt to undermine the plaintiff's well-being and property. Effective immediately, protective measures are granted, and any further violations will result in criminal charges. Finally, after weeks of tension, uncertainty, and fear, I could breathe. My brother was prohibited from entering my property, contacting me directly, or interfering with my life in any way. He had no choice but to comply, and I felt a sense of relief I hadn't felt in months. For the first time, the house felt like my own again. I could sleep at night without looking over my shoulder, without fearing that every sound in the dark was him. Sitting in the living room one evening, I reflected on everything that had happened. Betrayal, greed, obsession, revenge, they all left scars. But I also realized the power of perseverance, the strength of truth, and the importance of protecting oneself when family fails. I had fought for justice, not just for the inheritance, but for my peace of mind, for Mom's memory, and for the principle that greed and deceit cannot triumph over honesty and courage. Even now, I see reminders of the battle, the locks on the doors, the cameras, the security system, but I don't feel fear. I feel strength. I feel the quiet satisfaction of knowing that karma doesn't ignore greed, that the law can protect the innocent, and that the consequences of selfish actions are inevitable. My brother may have tried to destroy our family, but in the end, his obsession only revealed his weakness, while my courage and persistence proved stronger. And in the quiet moments, when I sit with Emma and look through Mom's old letters, I feel her presence, her pride, and her guidance. She taught us about love, respect, and fairness. And I finally understand that standing up for what's right is more important than avoiding conflict, more important than money, and infinitely more rewarding than living with fear. The lesson is clear. Family betrayal can be devastating, but justice, integrity, and courage will always prevail. The final chapter of this nightmare started quietly, almost unnoticeably. After weeks of tension, legal battles, and sleepless nights, I thought the storm had passed. My brother had been ordered to return every item. He had no access to the house, and protective measures were in place. I should have felt relief, but deep down, I knew that the danger wasn't entirely gone. Sometimes, when people are desperate and obsessed, they wait for a moment of weakness. I refused to give him that chance. One evening, as Emma and I were sorting through Mom's old letters and photographs, a knock came at the door. My heart raced, and instinctively, I froze. We didn't expect anyone, especially not him. I looked through the peephole. It wasn't my brother. It was a neighbor holding a small envelope. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a note in shaky handwriting. "I know he's been trying to manipulate you again. Be careful. A friend." My hand shook as I realized that my brother's obsession had isolated him, but it hadn't gone unnoticed by others who knew the truth. People were watching, and truth had allies too. The next few days were tense, but for a change, I was in control. I contacted the authorities and explained the ongoing threats. They were sympathetic and advised me to document everything. I kept meticulous records of every suspicious call, note, and incident. This time, I wasn't just defending an inheritance or mom's memory. I was defending my life and peace of mind. Every precaution, every step forward was a small victory over the lingering fear he tried to instill. Then, one morning, I received a call from my lawyer. The court is ready to finalize everything. They want to close the case and issue permanent protective measures. Your brother has no more legal standing, and any attempt to violate the order will have immediate consequences. Relief washed over me like a wave I had been waiting months for. Finally, the law had fully caught up with his obsession, leaving him no room to maneuver. I felt a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. It was painful that family could turn so dark, but comforting to know justice had been fully served. The final hearing was tense. My brother sat there, looking smaller, older, and defeated. Gone was the smug, arrogant expression he had worn throughout this ordeal. The judge spoke clearly and decisively. The defendant's repeated violations, manipulations, and harassment of the plaintiff demonstrate a complete disregard for family, law, and morality. This court orders permanent protective measures, and any future interference will result in criminal charges. I watched his face as color drained from it. For the first time, I realized that his own greed, obsession, and betrayal had trapped him. He had no allies, no support, only the consequences of his actions. Leaving the courtroom that day, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't realized I was carrying. Months of fear, anxiety, and sleepless nights were finally behind me. I could breathe, move forward, and focus on what really mattered, honoring Mom's memory, rebuilding my life, and cherishing the people who truly cared. Emma and I returned to the house, and for the first time in months, it felt safe, warm, and full of possibility. The letters, photographs, and treasures we recovered from the storage unit weren't just objects. They were reminders of love, family, and integrity. Over the following weeks, I slowly rebuilt my routines. I focused on work, spent more time with friends and family who had remained loyal, and started small projects to honor Mom's legacy. I realized that the real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the lesson she had taught, the memories she had left, and the values she had instilled. I felt a profound sense of responsibility to protect these, not just from greedy hands, but from the fear and bitterness that can poison a family. Occasionally, I think about my brother. I know he struggles with the consequences of his actions. He is isolated, ashamed, and, I believe, haunted by the reality that his choices cost him the trust and love of those closest to him. There is a strange satisfaction in knowing that greed and obsession have consequences. I don't hate him, I pity him. He chose his path, and now he must live with it. Meanwhile, I choose peace, honesty, and integrity. One evening, while sitting in Mom's old chair with a cup of tea, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the court battles, the harassment. It was a storm that I never wanted to face. But through it, I learned that courage, persistence, and truth are stronger than fear, manipulation, and greed. I learned that family can hurt, sometimes deeply, but justice has a way of balancing the scales, even if it takes time. And I learned that protecting what is rightfully yours isn't just about material things. It's about safeguarding your peace, your dignity, and your family's legacy. In the quiet moments, when I look through Mom's letters and photographs, I feel her presence, her pride, and her guidance. She always taught us about honesty, fairness, and resilience. I finally understand what she meant when she said that the right choices may be difficult, but they are always worth it. My life, once overshadowed by betrayal and fear, now feels lighter, stronger, and full of hope. The journey was painful, exhausting, and at times terrifying, but justice prevailed. My brother faced the consequences of his actions. Mom's legacy was protected, and I reclaimed my life. The moral is simple but powerful. Greed and betrayal may test you, and family may sometimes disappoint, but courage, truth, and integrity always triumph. Protect what is right, stand firm, and never let fear or deception define your life. Karma, justice, and the truth have a way of catching up, and when they do, the results are undeniable. In the end, I am free, and I can finally honor the love, trust, and memory of my mom without fear, without deception, and without regret.